On this Thursday night, the uproar over the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel's late-night show.
This is what authoritarianism looks like.
What Kimmel said and the wider concerns about state censorship. Mission accomplished, why the U.S. president's visit to the U.K. is seen as a win.
Hold that up.
And what Canada's prime minister hopes to accomplish on his trip to Mexico. 2 provinces no longer providing COVID vaccines for free to most people.
This is unfortunate.
Why, and the message doctors say this sends. Plus, scientific evidence why the French president and his wife are headed to court to prove she was born a woman.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with another indication of how the Trump administration is wielding its power and silencing voices it doesn't agree with. ABC pulled late-night host Jimmy Kimmel's show off the air after the Federal Communications Commission, the American broadcast media regulator, threatened the television network. Trump, who has repeatedly criticized Kimmel, today claimed Kimmel was fired for lack of talent. But it was Kimmel's monologue on Monday night addressing reaction to the arrest of the man who murdered Charlie Kirk that struck a nerve.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Kimmel's suspension flies in the face of Trump's promise to protect free speech. Members of his cabinet had already pledged to take action against those who appear to celebrate or mock Kirk's death. And a company in the midst of a $6 billion local news merger feared retribution if it didn't get Kimmel off the air. Jackson Prosco has our top story on what critics are calling state censorship.
Jimmy Kimmel!
The decision to suspend Jimmy Kimmel came suddenly, just hours after the Trump-appointed head of the U.S. broadcast regulator threatened to target licenses of TV stations that aired Kimmel's show.
I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or, there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
Soon after, Nexstar, which owns dozens of local ABC stations, said it would no longer air Kimmel. Then ABC announced the show would be preempted indefinitely.
For those of you who pray, now's the time to do it. Love you, Jimmy.
If they can come for Kimmel, they can come for anybody.
President Donald Trump has made no secret of his disdain for late-night comics, especially Kimmel, who frequently mocked him.
He needs to make a decision. You want to be a dictator or just a dick?
Well, Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else.
In fact, Trump has spent months openly calling for Kimmel to be fired.
Kimmel has no talent. They're next. They're going to be going. I hear they're going to be going.
The murder of Charlie Kirk and Kimmel's comments after seem to have given the administration a window to strong-arm broadcasters. ABC affiliate Nexstar is in merger talks that require federal approval, while the network itself has already paid Trump millions to settle lawsuits over its news coverage.
And it became a government transactional decision, at which point the companies involved said, okay, if we want things from the U.S. government, we've got to give things to the U.S. government.
That the U.S. government would so brazenly pressure a broadcast network flies in the face of a promise Trump himself made.
Immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America.
Now it seems the White House is willing to crack down in ways no previous administration has. Trump is now calling for NBC to fire its 2 late-night hosts, and he's floating the idea of pulling broadcast licenses for TV networks, claiming the majority of their content is against him. Donna?
All right, Jackson Prosco in Washington, thank you. Trump has used threats, lawsuits, and government pressure to intimidate and silence voices who challenge him. Listen to him this week berating Australian journalist John Lyons after Lyons asked the president how much wealthier Trump has become since he returned to the Oval Office.
My kids are running the business. I'm here. You know what the activity, where are you from?
I'm from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, Paul Cornyn's program.
Well, the Australians, you're hurting Australia, right? In my opinion, you are hurting Australia very much right now. And they want to get along with me. You know, your leader is coming over to see me very soon. I'm going to tell him about you. You set a very bad tone. Well, go ahead, John.
When the UAE does a deal like
you can set a nicer tone.
When the UAE does a deal, what does it want in return?
Quiet.
Both CBS and ABC News in the U.S. have settled multi-million-dollar lawsuits brought by Trump over their coverage. He has filed defamation lawsuits against the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. Republicans in Congress have stripped federal funding from NPR and PBS. It is worth noting that free speech is a bedrock of the U.S. Constitution and is protected by the First Amendment. President Trump is headed to Washington tonight after his second state visit to the UK. He got the full royal treatment, which seemed to please him. And today, he and the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, praised each other as they announced some business deals. The two leaders have vastly different political backgrounds, but as Redmond Shannon reports, Starmer seems to know how to handle Trump.
Well, he's a great gentleman. A great gentleman and a great king.
A farewell to one of the few people the current US president appears to look up to. As Donald Trump's wife, Melania, stays on at Windsor Castle for the morning to sample more British soft power. All the pomp and pageantry of the first half of the state visit here at Windsor Castle has been a prelude to the politics happening today. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Trump got down to business quickly and literally.
Okay, hold that up. Yeah.
Signing multi-billion-dollar cooperation deals in front of a tent full of business leaders. Before a meeting on more tricky topics, including the UK's impending recognition of the State of Palestine.
So I have a disagreement with the Prime Minister on that score. Okay. One of our few disagreements, actually.
Well, let me be really clear about Hamas. They're a terrorist organisation who can have no part in any future governance in Palestine.
Trump also pushing back on European pressure on him to increase sanctions on Russia, referring to NATO members Hungary and Slovakia who still buy Russian oil.
I'm willing to do other things, but not when the people that I'm fighting for are buying oil from Russia.
Trump refused to say that meeting Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska was a mistake, despite Russia's recent attacks on Ukrainian civilians. But he did say,
"He's let me down. He's really let me down."
After all the politics was done, Starmer took one last chance to impress the importance of Britain's bond with the US. The most opulent state visit in modern times has landed, a much-needed success for the beleaguered British leader. Redmond Shannon, Global News, Windsor, England.
America's two neighbors, Canada and Mexico, have signed a pact to deepen trade ties and partnerships. Mexico's president welcomed Canada's prime minister to Mexico City today. They're preparing to renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement next year. David Akin reports on the shared interests of the leaders of two countries with an unpredictable neighbor in the middle.
For just the first time since 2017, a Canadian prime minister touches down in Mexico, here to tend to a relationship experts say is too often taken for granted.
Canada is deepening our relationships with our long-standing partners that share our values and aspire to a better, fairer, and more sustainable world. Mexico is central to those missions.
Buffeted by trade wars with the U.S. and with China, Prime Minister Mark Carney first began working on the Mexican relationship in the spring when he invited Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum to the G7 in Alberta. They spoke by phone in August, and now here he is at the Palacio Nacional in the heart of the Mexican capital.
I'd say this is an opportunity both on the private and public sector side to launch strategies with Mexico and vice versa that actually withstand and hold regardless of what the state of U.S. policy is or what's coming out of Washington.
The two leaders are here to sign a Canada-Mexico comprehensive strategic partnership that commits both sides to increase the frequency of cabinet-level meetings, to find new ways to combat illicit drug and gun trafficking, and to disrupt transnational organized crime. But most of all, the two leaders want to prepare for the renegotiation of the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement, known in Canada as CUSMA.
We are both committed to our shared partnership with the United States, and we look forward to using the upcoming review of TMEC, USMCA, CUSMA, different acronyms for the same thing, to find ways to make it fairer and more effective.
This is a quick trip. Carney is back in Canada on Friday, but it's one in a series. The UK, France, Germany, Poland, all of them underlining Canada's current imperative that with an unreliable United States, Canada needs to strengthen its friendships everywhere. Donna.
Okay, David Akin in Mexico City, thank you. The American ambassador to Canada spoke to the Halifax Chamber of Commerce today. Pete Hoekstra slammed Canadian efforts to stand up to Trump's tariff and annexation threats.
Elbows up, me too. It was an anti-American campaign. No, we're not at war. If the president thought he was at war with Canada, you'd see a whole different kind of relationship.
Hoekstra argued Canada would not have what he called the best tariff rate in the world if it were a trade war. He also says the U.S. was ready for a bigger trade deal with Canada, but could not say why an agreement has not been reached. Canada's former Justice Minister, David Lametti, has been appointed as Canada's next ambassador to the United Nations. Lametti had been serving as Prime Minister Mark Carney's principal secretary. Lametti will replace former Liberal leader Bob Rae, who has held the job since 2020. Israel's far-right finance minister now says Gaza could be a real estate bonanza. At a real estate conference, Bezalel Smotrich said he is in talks with the U.S. over how to divide up Gaza after the war. He has been sanctioned by several countries, including Canada, for inciting violence against Palestinians. But as Mike Armstrong reports, that's done nothing to stop his plans.
The first reaction from the audience was laughter, but Israel's finance minister would then say there was nothing funny and that his comments to come were not a joke. Bezalel Smotrich had just been asked what he thought should happen in Gaza. The controversial far-right minister answered that the first phase of urban renewal in the Strip was done, the demolition, and that the time to build was coming. Smotrich says to listen to him. There's a plan on President Trump's desk that will turn what's happening into a real estate bonanza. I'm not kidding, he says. It pays off. Now, the Washington Post earlier this month reported the Trump administration is considering a plan to run Gaza for a decade as a trusteeship. Palestinians living in the enclave would be moved out, at least temporarily, while billions would be poured in to develop the territory as a tourism resort and high-tech manufacturing hub. Residential areas would be built up inland away from the coast. It was Trump's son-in-law who first floated the idea of developing Gaza, saying last year its waterfront property could be very valuable. That idea seemed to stick in the mind of Donald Trump when he returned to the White House.
I don't want to be cute, I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad, this could be so magnificent.
Well, the only person who appears to be speaking publicly about the plan is Smotrich, the ultranationalist leader of Israel's religious Zionist party. The reported Washington plan for Gaza is being criticized by observers and legal experts. Many say any displacement of Palestinians out of the enclave would be coercive at best and violate international law. Smotrich, on the other hand, appears to be saying it doesn't go far enough, that Israel deserves a part of the land in Gaza in return for the money it's spent on the war. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
2 Israeli soldiers have been killed at a border crossing in the occupied West Bank. The Israeli military claims the driver of an aid truck from Jordan opened fire at the main gateway Palestinians must use to get from the West Bank to Jordan. The driver was shot and killed. Israel denounced it as a terror attack. No one has claimed responsibility. They are not giving away the shot. Coming up, why 2 provinces are going to make some people pay for the COVID vaccine. Ever since vaccines for COVID-19 were made available in Canada, they have been free. Now that is starting to change. Quebec and Alberta will start charging some people for the COVID vaccine. Heather Yourex-West explains why and what the medical community thinks of it.
Helen Duars is recovering at home after an early season bout of COVID-19.
I came down on the weekend with a severe dry cough, the kind that leaves your diaphragm and upper chest aching.
The Calgary senior learned her diagnosis after purchasing a test from a local pharmacy, the virus arriving sooner than the vaccine.
COVID is around virtually 12 months a year, but it does have a seasonality, starts earlier than the flu, and an increase in the number of cases and hospitalizations is already occurring.
Seasonal vaccine campaigns for both COVID and the flu shots are just getting underway. And while most provinces will make both vaccines universally available, for some people in Quebec and Alberta, COVID immunization will come with a fee.
We know that through the NACI recommendations that they are in fact not advising on a universal approach.
This year, NACI, or the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, is recommending the shot for all adults over the age of 65, anyone living in congregate care, those with underlying health conditions, health workers, pregnant women, and people from racialized or Indigenous communities. Details of Quebec's policy have not yet been released, but the province says it's following the guidance of Quebec's own immunization committee. It says the vaccine program is most cost-effective if limited to adults older than age 75 or who have a chronic disease.
Going from a funded vaccine to an unfunded vaccine is almost telling people that it all of a sudden isn't as important, and it remains very important.
Here in Alberta, the province has expanded its original COVID vaccine program to include healthcare workers and people with a long list of eligible health conditions, including pregnancy, ADHD, and depression. For that population, the vaccine will be available as of October 1st. Everyone else will have to wait till October 20th and pay a $100 fee. Donna?
All right, Heather Yourex-West in Calgary, thanks. Fury in France ahead why hundreds of thousands of workers are angry about government budget cuts. In Paris, police in riot gear took on demonstrators as hundreds of thousands of people took part in anti-austerity protests. Marches all over France coincided with strikes by multiple unions involving workers from hospitals, schools, and the transportation sector. They're angry about the government's plan to cut 44 billion euros from public services. That led to France's prime minister being ousted in a confidence vote in Parliament last week. A successor was named by President Emmanuel Macron on Tuesday. The French president and his wife are planning to present evidence in an American court to prove that Brigitte Macron was born a woman. The couple has filed a defamation suit in July against American right-wing influencer Candace Owens, who has repeatedly promoted a conspiracy theory that Brigitte Macron was born a man. The Macron's lawyer told the BBC this week that his clients are prepared to present scientific evidence and photographs in court, including of Brigitte pregnant and raising her children. The lawyer says the case has been incredibly upsetting for Mrs. Macron and a distraction for the French president. In Spain, a basilica that's been under construction for more than a century is now a step closer to becoming the world's tallest church. Officials now say the central tower at the Sagrada Familia will be raised by early 2026. When that happens, the basilica will stand 172.5 meters tall. If construction stays on schedule, it will be completed 100 years after the death of the church's famed architect, Antoni Gaudi. Additional works on the basilica's interior will continue for another decade. Pitch perfect so far and aiming for a spot in the World Cup finals. What makes Canada's women's rugby team so strong? That's next. In the rugby hotbed of England, Canada's women's team is making a name for itself at the World Cup. Tomorrow, Canada takes on another rugby powerhouse, the defending champions from New Zealand. The winner will advance to the finals, and as Eric Sorensen explains, the fact Canada has come this far is no accident.
When Canada trounced Australia in its World Cup quarterfinal, it was one more demonstration that this country has become a world power in women's rugby, running up scores and doing it without much notice here at home. Even before the tournament started, confidence was building.
Our performance has been kind of consistently the best, and so for us, we're just excited to showcase that.
Other top nations like England have a long history of success in rugby. It's part of the culture in Ireland, in New Zealand, in France. Yet somehow Canada has risen to number 2 in the world.
Inevitably, the exposure and the recognition will come after winning major tournaments. So I think that'll be huge for Canada, rugby in Canada, when this happens.
In this World Cup, Canada has been in command in all 4 of its matches, outscoring opponents 193-31. Next up, though, New Zealand. They've also dominated, scoring 202 points. So when these two teams meet on Friday, something's got to give. No country is identified with rugby superiority more than New Zealand, famous for its haka rituals and winners of 6 of the last 7 Women's World Cups. The Canadian team, says Rugby Canada, has only a fraction of the budget of other top nations. A $1 million fundraising campaign even featured the Tragically Hip sponsoring vintage jerseys to raise money. But what got Canada this far was steadily building a team that the coach says could take on the best.
I think we always have amazing rugby players in Canada. It's just more the exposure of rugby sometimes lacking for them to just be the best.
England is the top-ranked team and New Zealand are defending champions. Canada will have to beat them both to win its first World Cup.
Where this Canadian team is at now, I think we're ready and we're more than capable. It's just up to us to go get it.
I'm really hopeful that this World Cup will finally be the one to sort of put us on the map.
It's a tall task to win it all, but the Canadians have put themselves in a position to try. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Cheering for them. That is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Air Canada showcases Banff, Alberta, Bonavista, Newfoundland and Labrador, and Sydney Lake, Yukon. Please keep them coming. Send your pictures of Canadian pride to globalnational@globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. Ann Gaviola will be at the anchor desk tomorrow, and I will see you again next week. Bye-bye.